Hello, everybody, and welcome to TSC Talks, another episode with Jill as your host. I'm really excited to be here today and to share my guest with you, Bryan Henry. He is the founder of, and you can correct me if I'm wording any of this wrong, he's the founder of Ascend Academy. And he has also been working with me over the last, 6, 7, 8 months as giving me some coaching. He unites and achieves lightworkers. That is the tagline on his business. I know he is so much more than that. He's become a personal friend, a mentor, and just one of the most calm, chill, centered guys that I know. So just brings in the masculine energy beautifully. And I'm really excited to have you here, Bryan, and do this interview with you. So if you want to start out, just giving a little bit of your background. And I think I asked you in the questions, the overall question is just kind of talking through your life story and sharing whatever story it is today, sharing, the experiences that you've had that have kind of led you to where you are today, whether good, bad, I honestly don't know a lot of your story. I've listened to some podcasts. The one with Todd Medina was really great. I learned some stuff about you and Amanda that I really appreciated. So so go ahead, share from your heart.
I'm glad you open up way for that, sharing from my heart, because as you know, that's my favorite place to share from. And it's always interesting to see how when one is in their heart, the story that gets shared may be completely different than the one that was shared yesterday.
So true.
So I know that you sent me a little bit of preliminary questions to kind of prepare myself, but I feel like the best thing I could have done to prepare myself was drop into here, in that chest region, in that body, to feel, and rather than have some pre-scripted answer, share what felt most inspiring in this moment.
Perfect.
What that feels like today is the story of a guy that loves to serve, loves to be in service of others, loves to contribute, loves to witness transformation take place before his eyes. Over the course of my journey, I've come to my perspectives, my beliefs around what goes into living a joyous, a fulfilling, and exciting life. And part of what that entails for me is being in service to something bigger than oneself. When I look back to all of my experiences, the accumulation of everything I've been through, all of the best ones came from being connected to love and making it more about giving than getting. And the irony becomes when you find yourself centered in this space of wanting to give, or you get to experience the joy and fulfillment that comes from that, you begin to realize that the giving and receiving are ultimately the same thing.
Wow. Just feeling into that a little bit. Yeah. I would say that's been true somewhat in my life. I think when I was younger, I had no concept of wanting to give. Yeah. That didn't really come into play for me, I'd say, in a serious way until like 2012. So yeah, just for someone that is your age, not that that really matters, but to have such profound insight and so centered, it's been impressive to me, because I think you're younger than my youngest son, or my oldest son. Oh my God, not youngest son. Yeah, I would be really young, but yeah. So yeah, I think I've always felt that with you, the heart energy from the first time that I met you doing the activation, I believe on Ascend Academy, when our paths crossed. There was something that came through that wasn't even really spoken. So powerful.
The other day, by the way, I just want to say as we get going here, I really appreciate the relaxed, as you know, the relaxed, slow, present pace. And for me, some of the most powerful interactions that I've ever had, conversations I've ever had, is when we're able to kind of be with that moment, that space of silence, and instead of rushing to kind of fill it up, because it can be a little bit uncomfortable at times to sit in that, and especially on a podcast. And I know because I have a show of my own.
That's right. I forgot to mention that. My goodness, I have that written down too.
Don't worry about it. Everything is perfect. And what gets said, I am in full trust, is going to be the perfect thing. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of just acknowledge that willingness to take one's time, to be patient, to not rush to act, not rush to say, because I can already sense that as we sit into that, what is said is going to be so much more powerful.
And you know, I have to be honest, it's not always my instinct as a podcaster. Sometimes it's hard for me to stay while I'm doing podcast. I'm getting better at it, to stay in my heart. I get pulled out very easily when I start thinking, oh my God, I've got to figure out what I'm going to say next, you know? So, yeah.
Well, that's why I say we support each other, and that my willingness to, or my attentiveness to the moment as it is, what feels most inspiring, being in my heart, will support you. But same way, it's that reflection, it's the energy that we choose to sit into together. It's really interesting and powerful, because you know it can stray away from what one might typically hear on a podcast. But like I mentioned, some of my most powerful, and even on the podcast, has been in that type of energy. And then I think you even mentioned that what comes through is beyond the words.
Yeah.
I want to say that that's also felt by the listener, just like you felt it from me in whatever it was that you came across.
Yeah. It's hard to, it doesn't need explaining, but I think there's a natural desire for people to want to put words around it. Yeah. So, yeah. So see, already I'm like not uncomfortable with it, but I'm like, I got to ask him a question. So, because I am curious about some of the pieces of what I perceive as aspects of your story. Yeah, I'm just like interested in the fact that you're so young, and how did your awakening, how did you come into this work? What brought you in? And if you feel like talking about that, how's that been? Your path into, right now you're living in Costa Rica. If that's okay that I share that. And when I first started working with Bryan, he was living in Toronto. And one day he said, well, I'm moving like in a few days. And I was like, what? You're moving in a few days? And I'm like, where are you moving? He's Costa Rica. I'm like, oh my God, I was so happy for you. And Amanda, when you told me that was I just felt the energy behind that. Yeah. So you go. And
so joyous for us. And I remember feeling so appreciative for that, because it was just so truly felt that you're there supporting us, that you saw it as the scary but courageous move that it was. And of course, I am more than happy to share about my story. I am here to speak. It's just, anyways, there's plenty that I can refer back to that I guess has supported me to become who I am today and be where I am today. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I've had a pretty rough past. I mean, I think we all have in different ways. But some of what I look back on is hard to believe that I really went through at times.
Really?
Yeah, just trying to really check into what level of detail to go into this. I'm an open book, by the way. You mentioned you're not sure if it was okay to mention the Costa Rica thing. I'm an open book.
Okay.
I'm happy to share whatever.
I figured, but I've gotten to some sticky situations before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not with me. That doesn't
Okay.
need to be a concern. Well, again, I'm happy to explore more deeply or share more deeply if you're curious. But the shorter version of it all is I've had quite a bit of experiences that falls outside of the realms of most people's worldview and what they've come to experience or believe is true or possible. This is where I ask you what level of detail you're interested
All
in
of it.
hearing. All of it and like full out.
Yeah, I'd go for no, seriously, Bryan, whatever you feel tapped into sharing and the time that you have is great.
I have more than enough time.
Okay.
Okay. I've had so many experiences, both treacherous and benevolent, beautiful. The treacherous has its own beauty too.
That's so true.
That has pointed me to one core belief. It's at the center of my soul, and of that belief is the belief that this is at the center of all souls, and it's love. We are of love. Everything is of love. Our greatest power is love. Love is the answer that heals all. We are journeying our way back to this. We are becoming fuller expressions of it. And the better we align ourselves with it, the better off we are going to be.
I feel that.
So thank you for feeling it too.
I do. Yep.
And I know that you've become an expression of this truth yourself.
Yeah, that's what I feel like it's in there. It's all paths are leading that way. I love Rob Doss's we're all just walking each other home to love. Yeah, I think for me, being a little older and coming more to realizing the path that I was on, it's that feeling of everything, I think that sometimes people in my life might laugh at me if I said that, like, oh, shut up. What are you talking about? We're all love. I mean, because I do say that and people occasionally give me a hard time for it. And so
here's the thing that they've yet to understand, and I've seen it play out so many times. In order for them to tap into that, there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be looked at, felt, and released. And some of that stuff can be really uncomfortable. So it's easy to, and in some ways, it's more comfortable to kind of shut that down because that process, that willingness to open their hearts up to that truth and feel that love that you may be speaking of, it requires one to feel a whole bunch of shit. And at times it can be easier to shut that down.
Yeah. And you can feel that. I could feel that energy sometimes when people just, it's such a foreign concept, something we kind of like hear on the movies or we joke about or people post about on social media. What does that really mean? I think it's something that's so experiential.
It can only be.
Obviously, yeah.
And the beautiful thing becomes once you experience it, even a taste of it, and you come to this light bulb moment, like, this is what I want. This is what I want to experience. This is what I want other people to experience. And you begin to devote your life to that. Well, then you also realize that there's always, always more room for higher love.
I just heard that from somebody else similar today. Well, it was more in reference to we're always peeling off layers. We're peeling off layers of ourselves. So I guess it would be the other side of that. You know, we're always moving into higher states of love when we peel off these layers. And there's a lot of layers for a lot of people, including myself, a lot of layers.
Those layers have been taught. They've been passed
Programming.
down, right? But who did we get this programming from?
I would say our parents, our society, it's everywhere. We're bombarded with it. In fact, that's a concept that I think I kind of always intuitively knew, because I never really followed it. I never was good at following the program. Just something in me was like, nah, doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. But of course I am immersed in it to the point where I'm not even aware how programmed I am. But yeah, I think it's an awareness now with things shifting in the world and more people being like, wait a minute, I'm more aware as I try to step out of it as much as possible of how massively we are really incarnated into this dense reality or aspect of reality. So.
And you become more aware of that through your own process of peeling back the layers.
Yes.
I know you've been on a journey of.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I can say that there's always more layers, which is, yeah, it's like, I think we have this idea that we want to just get to this resting place where, and I'm not saying that you cannot be there, because we want to be in the present moment, but when stuff comes up that's hard, and knowing that really you can't push it down anymore. I think that's kind of been huge awareness this past year, is stuff that, oh, I'll look at that later. You know, I know it's there, but now it's like go time. Like it just seems better served to address it now than to keep pushing it down. So that's kind of what's come up for me in the last year, as layers start to fall away or continue to. So,
and that goes right back to that point of being willing to feel that and face that is the means by which we allow for the light that's beneath that to shine more through. So you're getting to experience firsthand how rewarding it can be to feel and peel back those layers, opposed to shutting it down like many still do with the ego, with the mind.
Much better. Yeah, I think that when you have a lot of traction of doing that, it's hard. It creeps back in very quickly. So I'm really glad to be connected in your platform and to have like supportive events and people that are like-minded, and a few other platforms that I've gotten involved with throughout the course of these past few years. They feel like the work you're doing is a lifeline for people. I see it as just vital, more than, you know, what we've been programmed to believe is there to help us. So it's that inner work that I feel like everybody needs right now. Ongoing, intensive inner work. And that's the way the world's going to change, obviously, through that inner love. But
it's the cliche, and the more I walk this journey, I just see that the cliches are where all the gems and truths are. It's all really the simple things, but it's the one to change the world, you must change yourself. And a lot of that work is, if not all of it, is inner game.
Yeah. And, you know, with the programming, it's like you don't realize how much you've internalized that to the point where it's like, yeah, so many times I will think, oh, that might be programming that's kind of dropping, or that I'm aware of. Yeah, I'm probably not explaining it well, but.
No, I think you're doing an amazing job. And I really do believe that it's becomes this invitation for us all to just look at what comes up for us. Jill, you mentioned the work I'm doing. There was a piece that dropped in about that I wanted to share on the power of community. There has been absolutely, I can't pinpoint any one thing that has been more supportive of my process of becoming a higher expression of me, of my purpose, than relationship and community. It's
I believe
in
it.
those experiences that all the stuff comes up to the surface that we get to work on, that we get to shift. And in a group of individuals that are supporting one another consciously in the intention of supporting one another through that, there just becomes no greater fulfilling experience as well as beneficial from my perspective.
I would agree. I mean, I'm not in any particular like physical community other than my family here, but I've experienced over the last, just through all the changes that I've been through, a loss of community. And it's been, I think of one thing that has been the most that I've noticed, and I've heard it from other people. My daughter's expressed it, the way the schools are now, just other friends have expressed it. We used to, actually on another podcast that a gentleman was talking about, we used to go out and shovel each other's walks, or we used to hang out and talk outside the house or whatever, just like kind of casual, like local neighbors and stuff. A lot of that's gone. And, for everybody, I think that's a missing piece right now. Not a lot of people have community. And especially, not especially for everybody, but on a spiritual path, when you're called to do the type of work that you're doing, it seems to be crucial.
I guess that's where it becomes about each and every individual taking responsibility for their own lives. And instead of waiting for it to show up, finding it, creating it.
Yeah.
Because I too was that guy sitting in a house in Toronto where you hardly spoke to your neighbors, and I knew I didn't want that. So I made first I set the intention to experience something richer, something deeper, and then I aligned myself with that. And I'm not just referring to upping and moving to Costa Rica. That was one of the choices I made. I can name so many others that have led to meaningful, heartfelt, deep, profound interactions and relationships, heartfelt connections. And that's just one of them. That's just one of those moves. So it's up to us all to kind of, see that the opportunity is available to us. It's easy to say, oh, this is what the world has become, right?
True.
But it's a lot more expansive and beneficial to say, what do I want and how can I create it?
Yeah. Not easy to do. Yeah. No excuses on that. Yeah.
Again, I just want to mention that this is not to say that everyone's got to buy a one-way ticket to Costa Rica.
Oh no, I didn't even think of that. No.
Yeah, it's just, often we often get like, I totally get that my life looks like a dream life to many, and it's very closely aligned with my dream life. I feel like I'm living an amazing, adventurous, exciting, fun life, and it only continues to evolve. But there's something there in that when I get messages along the lines of "you're so lucky," I don't think I feel blessed. I feel grateful, and I feel like life has definitely been supportive of me, but I also want everyone to know that it's all available to them too.
Anyways, I feel like I railroaded what you were saying. So
it's okay. Must have been called for too.
Yeah, I guess I think putting some words to, or some lived experience to what you're talking about. So how are you creating community? How have you moved yourself at such a young age to a point where you're able to grasp these concepts? Now, I mean, obviously, how is you followed your highest self, but for the audience listening, that's not possibly as, I don't want to say up to date, or just some of these concepts are a little abstract. Can you speak to that? Put some.
It's interesting because then I suppose we must consider, like, where are they, right? Because I can, of course, address this from so many different angles, and like you said, there might be terms that I choose to use on my podcast that may be a little bit, abstract and not relevant to those listening in here. So I guess my question to you then is, what specifically would you like your audience to know from me?
That's a really good way to put it. Okay, so I would say my audience is a combination of people that have been through some kind of a transformative experience. A lot of my friends in the cannabis industry, a lot of people come to that after their own health breakdowns and have these miraculous or really amazing, not only physical, but, spiritual experiences. So there's a basic level of understanding, I would say. And then the parents and families that either individuals who have tuberous sclerosis or other special needs, I think they definitely have that depth where they're a lot of the people, I would say, know to a degree that they are here for that. This is a higher calling than just what is here in the physical. So I would say there's some basic, definitely people that are listening to this are interested in peace, in finding inner peace in the middle of chaos. I think that's a lot of what I'm hearing from friends, family. How do we come home in this world that's like, yeah.
Okay. I have a clear sense of where to take this then.
Is that helpful?
Definitely. I've been through my own version of chaos too. Right.
I figured.
Yeah, and I think maybe sharing a little bit about that has a place, so that I feel a little bit more relatable. Of course, we're all on our own journeys and we all face different things, but it didn't just happen like this, right? I think we all have to go through our own experience of chaos, of shadows, of challenges, because as I've seen time and time again, it's those experiences that make us bring out the strength, that bring out the light in us. It has to always, from my experience, come from some experience of challenge, where that offers us the contrast and know what we're made of. So
yes,
my chaos wasn't pretty. It was having to see my partner wake up every single day and not know my name for months. It was spending the entire day trying to remind her of what her life was, what our life was, trying to make this beautiful being feel some ounce of what it meant to be loved, while she was there with no memory, terrified, hearing from the stranger that everything's gonna be okay, that I loved her. My chaos was having to see her suffer for years. My chaos had to go to the darkest of the dark, things that I wouldn't wish on anybody, but all chaos that helped me remember the power that we are. It comes right back to the message that love is the answer. Love is the greatest power there is. And if we learn to tap into this, and it's not that woo-woo kind of just leave it at the peace, love, and happiness, because it's not only going to be that. Maybe someday, and I believe that's possible. I don't want to say that it's inevitable that we have to suffer, but from what I've gathered, and I know you have too, not a lot of people are in a place where they can believe that. So that's why I share that I've, again, been through my challenges. And when we talk about finding peace within the chaos, my answer then becomes, how can we find peace within? The answer is right there in the statement, peace within the chaos. It's not as much about manipulating our circumstances as it is about learning to be accepting, resilient within them.
Very well put. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I knew a little bit about that from reading something that you wrote, and I had a new understanding for your presence. I don't want to say I could tell that, yeah, that it wasn't just like you landed here and all roses and butterflies, that there's just a depth that you have. And so to learn about that, which I can't imagine that. I mean, I've had horrible things, but that memory piece, that's just really terrifying. I have had times in my life when, due to drugs and alcohol, I didn't remember. And I think that was something that, yeah, that's just can't imagine it. So, yeah. Well, I can for a short period of time, but not like you're describing. And so just beautiful turnaround with what you've gotten from those experiences. Thanks for sharing that.
I'm happy to, because I know, well, I'm going to experience the light at the end of the tunnel. Not to say that it's all sunshine and rainbows even today, but what I can say with confidence is that it does get better. It does get better. And I so deeply believe that it gets better for us all.
I believe it too. We're not supposed to suffer.
There's an intelligence. I so certainly agree. I've come to experience and witness the acts of an intelligence that is expressed through all things. And in my experience, I've been shown so many reminders that this intelligence wants the best for us, wants us to be happy, wants us to be at peace, wants us to feel fulfilled, but probably most of all, wants us to grow. And that's why even love sometimes can be challenging, because love knows what's on the other end of that.
Yeah, so good. That's a quotable one. Love on the other end of that. I have a good visual on that. So what are your practices? How do you stay aligned other than everything you've already shared? Mm-hmm. Are you rigid with them? What do you do?
I practice finding the best balance for me between discipline and flow.
Yeah, that's something else that I'm glad I thought to ask, because people in the communities that that are listening are always looking for tools. Like how do I how, and people are used to a lot of external, I'm timing myself, I'm weighing myself, I'm looking at this to tell me what to eat. And so to hear someone that you're more internally driven, or not even driven, but it's helpful. So
what about what I shared allowed you to gather that, or was that more just kind of knowing me outside of this conversation?
it's just knowing you. Yeah, I mean, you have shared, I mean, some of the guests you've had on your platform, well, particularly John DePass, right out of the gate, I realized that you had I knew you had an interest in fitness, and from the things that we've done with the breath work, I knew you probably had some practices, but you don't really mention it much. So,
Yeah.
and I've seen your videos on Facebook, the workouts. That is, love them. Love those little clips.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think just put some context behind it. I love what you said, but to make it a little bit more clear to the listeners, being internally driven, right? Letting my decisions come from a internal compass, opposed to it being these external references, right? In the case of health and fitness, opposed to counting calories, more being in tune with what my body is asking for and what feels good in my body. Even so, there's a deeper message here. We can definitely go to use the trajectory of health and fitness, but I think even deeper than that is how important it becomes to attune to that internal compass that we all have, and letting that be what dictates our decisions, and let that be, what we act in alignment with. So you started this particular kind of part of the conversation with asking about, like, what sort of practices do I have? And I mentioned that balance between discipline and flow. Well, ultimately what that means to me is we all have a different balance. And furthermore, we all also have a changing sense of balance, meaning what can be right for us in any given moment can very well be completely different next week. And that's why one of my, I find myself in my sharing and in my teaching and whatnot, certain messages just kind of keep coming back up, and that tells me something. These are the most important ones. And one of the most important ones, I would say, is recognizing that there's no right way to be. And what may be right for you in a given moment can very well change in another. And being able to adapt with that and recognize when it's time to maybe shift the way that you're going about things, maybe time to not keep up with that daily habit or routine that you've cultivated, maybe giving yourself the space, maybe bringing more discipline into your life and being more structure oriented. That dynamic is always changing, and that's why we can't just listen to what other people are telling us. You explore that, you learn from it, but it always ultimately becomes about checking in with how it's worked for you.
So true. I'm really glad you said that. I think that's been an ongoing struggle for me, and an awareness that I've had over the past 5 or 6 years with being really attached to running and that activity, and just all the timing and all that. I turned a corner and I stopped looking at any externals. I just would go out, and I didn't force myself, but I would go inwards when I was running, and it became more of a meditation. I stopped caring about, my times or how long, and I ended up getting way better. I went through, I got, just by going internally, I was able to perform better. I had been spent my whole life up until probably my 40s doing all these athletic things with just getting pulled out of my body all the time. And it was just an amazing, amazing thing. And, to more recently where I feel called to let go of my attachment to even running at all. Not that I would give it up completely or that's called for, but just not having to need that to get the downloads. I think I was getting a lot of downloads when I was out there running, and I still do, but relying on one thing. And yeah, so that piece plus the piece of turning inwards and not like, I know that when I have some picture where I had a blanket over my clock in where I was working out, and you notice that. So, and it's very easy for me to get pulled out, but I have found it's so much more rewarding when the activity itself is not dictated by external parameters, and when I can bring to it that presence and be able to flexible to shift up the routine and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge area of like attachment that I've had, and it served me well. Even during some of the dark times, it was always something that I did with some kind of fitness or workout, but then more into seeing it now as more of a meditative time, even though you're asking your body to perform or to push yourself. So I'm getting a little off track here. So
Track, I call, and the flow.
okay. Yeah, I'll just go on and on and on. I
Yeah.
could talk about this subject for a long time. But yeah, I think people are looking for ways to go in to kind of put it all together. So I love that, like the breath work that you shared. I didn't know anything about that besides Wim Hof. And yeah. So what do you have on this?
On that note is, there are practices that many have used and have certainly benefited from themselves. And so while, yes, I will always drive home that message, find what works for you, it also entails, that willingness to try things, to explore different strategies, perspectives, even that you do feel shared by others, or you do come across shared from others. I'm even personally just in this really mode of eagerness to learn, right? Eagerness to learn from others and take in information and again apply that to my own life and how I feel most aligned with it. Now, there are certainly, ways to go about it that I recommend one give a shot at the very least, right? Meditation is there are no musts, there is no be all end alls, but I would find it hard to believe that meditation isn't a practice that would benefit most, if not all, people. Some form of a meditation practice. That for me is the fundamental practice when it comes to tuning into that internal compass. Another piece dropping in about that. So using meditation as a means to attune ourselves with ourselves, right? Our own internal guidance system. And that piece that I want to just kind of go deeper into now is first realizing that we have an internal compass, right? We have this
right
ability to govern our own thinking and our choices. And I do believe that there's this sense of just knowing that exists within all of us.
I agree.
Because you've felt it before, right? And isn't it true that sometimes you feel it more than others?
Definitely.
And isn't it true that when you feel strongly associated or connected to your knowing and you act on that, what sort of experiences does it lead to?
Incredible, like amazing. Yeah. Like, wow. Like, why don't I do this more? Yeah. It's so easy to forget. But meditation definitely opens those doors, or those, I don't know what to call them. Channels. There we go.
But doors certainly works.
Doors.
Too. What's behind those doors that we're looking for?
Yeah.
So I see
Yeah.
this becoming a full circle, just kind of bringing it all together is, I think one of the things that you're looking to get out of me
Mhm.
is how have I been able to create the sort of life that I'm living.
Mhm.
I think I can, in one way at least, sum it up with saying attuning to and aligning with that internal compass.
Wow. That makes total sense. Sense isn't the right word, but that, yeah. Yeah. And that is so, I want to say inspiring, and I want to say admirable, because I know personally how difficult that is. Like you said, it's not all rainbows. I mean, if you're attuning to your highest self, and you're not always going to be in your comfort zone, that's for sure.
Very rarely will you be in your comfort zone if you're listening to your higher self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like
You're right
being in
about
my
that.
comfort zone. I do. I have to say, it's comfortable.
It's comfortable, and
Comfortable.
sometimes we'll have that moment to enjoy that for sure. I'm not a masochist. I'm not someone that goes too far off in the other direction. It's simply realizing, I think, the more we answer to that call, the more we align ourselves with it, the more we'll be rewarded for it.
I like that. And, just to circle back and touch on the piece you brought up about our experiences being the importance first of going inward, and it just being so variable. We're all so different. I think that's one thing that I'm always confronted with, is just the expectation that other people think and see things the way I do, when it's just so, we've all had so many different pieces that have come in and affected us. It's just craziness. And then, yeah, so I think to remember that not to compare yourselves, not to lean on the external world to tell you what's right for you. All those things are just huge. Were huge stepping stones for me, and continue to be. So thanks for bringing all that in. I feel like we've wandered, or I've wandered. We probably haven't, but it's all been really, really beautiful. Beautiful conversation.
I'm seeing it as this visual of there's all these different building blocks, and it seemed like we have jumped between different topics, but I can see, just zooming out, how they've all just been these perfectly placed blocks to create this entire whole conversation that all do really fit together very well.
Yeah, I can feel it coming around now, as you said that. Yeah. I just need to tap in for a minute and see if there's anything else that feels like, and you too, anything else that's coming up for you before we wrap up here.
I will certainly check in with myself, and I'll also encourage you to just check in if there's anything else that you'd like to hear from me particularly.
Yeah. Just give me a second here. I do want to look at well, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Ascend Academy and what you're doing there. I think it would be a good place for you. I mean, I know the greater motives and everything, but what's your vision? What's going on with that? And yeah, I'd say give me your pitch.
I kind of like that. And here's why. I too have, just evolved into this awareness and this way of looking at the world that is coming at it from a higher perspective, that we have a purpose to serve. We all have a purpose to serve. This is where I share with everyone that we all have a purpose to serve. We're here for a reason, and everyone has a unique, beautiful gift to give, and it's in discovering that gift from within ourselves and giving that we are going to find the greatest amount of joy, aliveness, and fulfillment in our lives. We bring a full circle to that message that the joy really does come from not what we're trying to get, but what we're here to give. And the irony is, in the experience of that, we get so much of what we want and more, better than we could have been imagined. Let that set in for a moment.
I am.
At the same time, we deserve what we want. We can have what we want. We can go after our dreams and create for what we want. And so that's why I kind of start off on a little bit of a funny note, because when you talked about the whole, it sounds a little bit worldly. I just wanted to quickly say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we shun that. Sometimes we shun that aspect of the human experience as well. And I think we've kind of briefly kind of touched on this too.
Yeah.
You know, the whole trying to stay clear away from the business, the money, and play the game of,
like I'm
that happens too. All right. And if there's probably so many ways I can sum up my journey, but one way I'm going to is, it's been so much about bringing those two things together. The higher awareness that we are these infinite spiritual beings playing the game of being a human and having a human experience.
Right.
And we're so much more than just this. At the same time, at the very same time, we are also these human beings having this human experience that have desires in the physical, and it becomes a pretty fun thing to do, to go out and chase our dreams and create what we want for. But the message that just is coming in so strong for me here is, everything that you want and more would be found in coming into alignment with our higher selves, with that internal compass, and with that greatest power that there is, that I call.
Wow.
I know you asked me about the Ascend Academy, but that wanted to come through instead.
Okay.
I am going to share though. I am going to share. That felt good. I'm glad that I let that through. But I think it's also important that I take this opportunity to share a little bit about how I go about doing this personally. The Academy is a space for community, for people to come together, to learn from each other, to grow alongside each other. We explore anything really that is going to support an individual in becoming a higher expression of their potential and purpose. I get the blessed opportunity to find these people that I believe will serve the community. I've connected with so many of them already, but I find a personal pleasure in going out there and discovering more. And on that path, I find these great individuals that I just feel called to provide a platform for. And so those end up being the ones that I invite to teach in the Academy. And lastly, I guess what I'll say is, I'm also very excited about stepping back into my role as a teacher and a leader. I've, for the last little while, been very focused on the community aspect of things, and creating the space for that to take place.
Sure.
But I would say very recently, actually, there's been this reignited passion and desire and belief in oneself, really, that I am here to share. I'm here to teach, and I have something to give as well, something that I've always known, and I've never completely lost touch with it. But more recently, there's been this reignited fire to serve on that more personal, direct, one-on-one
Awesome.
types of setting and levels, and that's been coming through a little bit lately. So I'm really happy to be feeling that and expressing it.
Oh, great! I'm glad to hear. Glad to hear. And the guests that you've had on that you've found have been amazing. Every one of them. So good job. Good job. going out there in the 3D and finding all that awesomeness. Yeah, they seemed, yeah, very surprisingly refreshing. I guess not surprisingly. I don't know what the right word is, but they're all good. Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much all that. I can't think of anything else that I want to ask, or I will put your links and all your business profiles in the notes. So yeah, I'm just really grateful, Bryan, for your presence in my life, and yeah, that our paths crossed, and just how much you've helped me appreciate my own value. I can't thank you enough for that.
Wow.
I'm gonna tear up a little. Yeah, I think yeah, it's been there, but it really is. In the last time we've worked together, it's become, I feel, more self-worth. I hate to use that word too, but self-love than I had ever than I thought possible. So yeah, almost to the point, like, why haven't I like thought about this before? What was wrong with me? You know, it's just, it sucks to not like yourself, you know, it really does. So thank you for, yeah, our work together.
This is where I say that there is absolutely nothing better for me to hear from someone that I've connected with and now see as a friend than what you just shared. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more fuel to that fire. Jill, you are doing some amazing things. The growth that you've been enduring has been incredible to witness, and you are just so clearly aligned and continue to evolve into this super important truth that is, it all really comes from self-love.
Thank you. Ah, thank you so much.
And thank you for being a beacon of that, because the more that you grow into loving yourself, the more you inspire others to do as well.
Same to you. Keep going. I love it. All right, are we done here?
Yeah, I think.
All right.
I feel complete.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Much love.